What if I told you that one of the most prolific sexual trafficking operations in modern American history was disguised as a massage appointment? That dozens of underage girls, some as young as 14, were lured into the home of a billionaire, not by the billionaire himself, but by a woman. A woman who smiled at them, put them at ease, told them it was just a simple job, easy money, nothing to worry about. Her name is Ghislaine Maxwell, and according to federal prosecutors, court depositions, and the testimony of dozens of survivors, she was not just Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend. She was his chief recruiter, his organizer, his enabler. The Department of Justice called her conduct among the worst offenses of this kind that the court has seen. I'm Mark Epstein, and this is the Epstein Files. To understand how Ghislaine Maxwell became the architect of a recruitment pipeline that funneled vulnerable girls into Jeffrey Epstein's world, we need to go back to Palm Beach, Florida, in the early 2000s. Ghislaine Maxwell was born on December 25, 1961, in Maison Lafitte, France, the youngest of 9 children of Robert Maxwell. When Robert Maxwell died under mysterious circumstances in November 1991, falling from his yacht off the Canary Islands, his empire collapsed. His empire collapsed amid revelations of massive financial fraud, including the looting of hundreds of millions from employee pension funds. Ghislaine moved to New York City in the early 1990s. By the mid-1990s, she was in a romantic relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. By the mid-1990s, she had become a fixture of his social world. But according to court records, her role went far beyond companionship. In the civil case of Virginia Giuffre versus Ghislaine Maxwell, filed in the Southern District of New York, Giuffre alleged under oath that Maxwell recruited her in 2000. Giuffre was 16 years old. Maxwell approached her while she was working as a locker room attendant at the spa at Mar-a-Lago. Maxwell told the teenager she knew a wealthy man looking for massage therapy. The job would pay well. It was presented as legitimate. Giuffre testified that Maxwell drove her to Epstein's Palm Beach residence at 358 El Brillo Way that same day. But Virginia Giuffre was not an isolated case. Not even close. When the Palm Beach Police Department began its investigation in March 2005, following a complaint from the parent of a 14-year-old girl, detectives began uncovering a pattern, a system. The investigation, which resulted in a detailed probable cause affidavit filed by Detective Joseph Recaré, identified dozens of underage victims, and the name that kept surfacing over and over alongside Epstein's was Ghislaine Maxwell. According to the Miami Herald's investigative series Perversion of Justice, published beginning November 28, 2018, by reporter Julie K. Brown, multiple victims described a virtually identical recruitment pattern. A young girl, often from a troubled home, often in financial need, would be told by another girl, or by Maxwell directly, that a wealthy man needed a massage. The pay was $200 to $300 for an hour. The girl would be brought to one of Epstein's properties, and what was described as a massage would escalate into sexual abuse. But here's where it gets disturbing. Maxwell didn't just recruit. According to multiple victim depositions and the federal indictment, she participated directly in normalizing the abuse. She was present during encounters. She instructed girls on how Epstein liked to be touched. She created an environment where what was happening seemed to a frightened teenager like it was simply how things were. Courtney Wild, another survivor who was 14 years old when she was brought into Epstein's orbit around 2002, described in public statements and court proceedings how the system worked. She told the Miami Herald that she was recruited by another young girl, promised money for a massage, and brought to the El Brillo Way residence. Wild has publicly stated that she herself was then pressured to recruit other girls, creating a pyramid of exploitation with Epstein and Maxwell at the top. Now, if you're still here, it means you can handle the truth. So let me show you what they didn't want you to see. On July 2, 2020, Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested by the FBI at a 156-acre property she had purchased in Bradford, New Hampshire, for approximately $1 million in cash under a limited liability company. She was charged in a federal indictment filed in the Southern District of New York, case number 20 CR 330, with 6 counts, including conspiracy to entice minors to travel to engage in illegal sex acts, enticement of a minor to travel to engage in illegal sex acts, conspiracy to transport minors with intent to engage in criminal sexual activity, and transportation of a minor with intent to engage in criminal sexual activity. A superseding indictment later added sex trafficking of a minor. The indictment laid bare the operation in precise terms. It described how Maxwell befriended victims, took them shopping, took them to the movies, built trust, and then brought them to Epstein's residences in New York, Palm Beach, and New Mexico, where they were subjected to abuse. The indictment covered conduct spanning from approximately 1994 to at least 2004, a decade of systematic recruitment. During the trial, which took place from November 29th to December 29th, 2021, before Judge Allison J. Nathan in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York, 4 women testified as accusers, identified during the proceedings by pseudonyms or first names to protect their privacy. I'm Mark Epstein, and this is the Epstein Files. One accuser, referred to as Jane, testified that she was 14 years old when Maxwell and Epstein began abusing her around 1994 at Epstein's Palm Beach estate. She described how Maxwell was present during sexual encounters and how Maxwell's participation made it seem normal, even acceptable. Jane testified that Maxwell sometimes touched her directly during these encounters. Source: Maxwell Trial Transcripts, SDNY, December 2021. Testimony of Jane. Another accuser, referred to as Kate, testified about encounters beginning when she was 17 in the mid-1990s and described how Maxwell called her arranged travel and set up meetings with Epstein in locations, including London and New York. Kate testified that Maxwell told her that she and Epstein enjoyed a sexual relationship and that Kate could be part of it. Source: Maxwell Trial. Transcripts, SDNY, December 2021. Testimony of Kate. A third accuser, Carolyn, gave testimony that is among the most devastating in the entire trial record. Carolyn testified that she was introduced to Epstein around 2002, when she was approximately 14 years old. She described being recruited by another young girl in her neighborhood in Palm Beach. Carolyn testified that over time, she was paid to bring other girls to Epstein and that Maxwell managed the scheduling of these encounters. Carolyn stated that she visited Epstein's Palm Beach home over 100 times between the ages of 14 and 18. Source: Maxwell Trial Transcripts, SDNY, December 2021. Testimony of Carolyn. The fourth accuser, Annie Farmer, used her real name publicly. Farmer testified that she was 16 years old in 1996 when she was invited by Maxwell and Epstein to Epstein's Zorro Ranch in Stanley, New Mexico. Farmer described how Maxwell gave her a massage, during which Maxwell touched her inappropriately. Source: Maxwell Trial. Transcripts, SDNY, December 2021. Testimony of Annie Farmer. Property records: Zorro Ranch, Stanley, New Mexico. This is where the official story falls apart. Because here is the question that the court record forces us to confront. How did this operation persist for a decade? How did Maxwell recruit girl after girl in location after location? Palm Beach, New York City, New Mexico, the US Virgin Islands, London, without law enforcement intervention. The Palm Beach Police Department completed its investigation in 2006 and recommended that Epstein be charged with multiple felonies. The case was referred to then State Attorney Barry Krischer, who instead presented the case to a grand jury in a way that resulted in a single charge of solicitation of prostitution. A characterization that itself re-victimized the minors involved. Source: Palm Beach PD records, Miami Herald, Perversion of Justice, Part 2. And then came the non-prosecution agreement. The deal, negotiated in 2007 and executed in 2008 between Epstein's defense attorneys and then United States Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, Alexander Acosta. That agreement, associated with PESA records related to case number ZO8-80736-CIV and related filings under ZO8-8099, granted immunity not only to Epstein on federal charges, but critically, to his alleged co-conspirators. The agreement used that phrase, co-conspirators, without naming them publicly. But court records and subsequent reporting have established that this immunity would have covered individuals including Maxwell. Source: PESA, case number ZO8-80736-CIV, NPA filing, Miami Herald, perversion of justice. I'm Mark Epstein, and I'll see you in the next file. Share this before it disappears from your feed. I want to know what you think. This means that in 2008, the United States government, through a plea deal that was crafted largely in secret and without notification to the victims, in potential violation of the Crime Victims' Rights Act, effectively shielded from prosecution the woman who, by the testimony of dozens of survivors, was the primary recruiter of underage victims. It would take more than a decade until Maxwell's arrest in July 2020 for federal charges to finally reach her. On December 29, 2021, the jury returned guilty verdicts on 5 of 6 counts, including the most serious charge, sex trafficking of a minor. On June 28, 2022, Judge Allison J. Nathan sentenced Ghislaine Maxwell to 20 years in federal prison. During sentencing, Judge Nathan stated that Maxwell's crimes were heinous and predatory. Maxwell was also ordered to pay a special assessment of $750,000. But a conviction does not answer every question. What about the other recruiters? The girls who were themselves victims and were then pressured to bring in other girls. The trial testimony described a pyramid structure where exploitation cascaded downward. Many of those individuals were never charged, nor should they have been, as many were themselves minors. But the question remains, were there other adults beyond Maxwell and Epstein who facilitated this pipeline? Court documents reference individuals whose roles have never been fully adjudicated. Some of those names appear in the documents unsealed from the Jeffrey versus Maxwell case beginning in January 2024. The unsealing, ordered by Judge Loretta Preska, released hundreds of pages of depositions and flight logs. And then there are the financial institutions. In June 2023, J.P. Morgan Chase agreed to pay $290 million to settle a class action lawsuit brought by Epstein's victims, who alleged that the bank knowingly facilitated Epstein's trafficking operation by maintaining his accounts despite red flags. Deutsche Bank settled a similar lawsuit for $75 million in 2023. These are not conspiracy theories. These are settlement agreements filed in federal court. The system that Maxwell managed did not operate in a vacuum. It required money. It required properties. It required travel. It required silence. And it required someone who could look a teenage girl in the eye, tell her everything was fine, and deliver her to a predator. According to the federal government of the United States, proven at trial and affirmed by a jury, that someone was Ghislaine Maxwell. The powerful bury the truth, but paper has a longer memory than power. If this episode opened your eyes, hit subscribe and the bell icon, because every file matters. Comment below. How did this system survive for so long? I read every single comment. Share this before it disappears from your feed. Next file. The secret plea deal. How a United States attorney shielded a predator and his accomplices from justice, and what the victims were never told. The document at the center of it all has a name, and you deserve to see it. I'm Mark Epstein, and I'll see you in the next file.